Hello and welcome back to the Bright Founders Talk podcast from Temi. Temi is an international software development company that designs, builds and delivers software for sustainable businesses and promising startups. My name is Chris and today's guest is someone who is the current founder of two successful businesses as well as the mentor of another company at the same time. I'm not sure how you have the time for all this. Ron Green, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. So we've got the lighthearted questions to begin with, the quick fire questions, but take your time if you want to. The first one, what makes a good boss?
I've always enjoyed it when my bosses understood my job in a deep way. Meaning, I come from sort of an engineering background, and so when I worked with bosses that could, in my world, write code, could understand architectures and help me with, my job at a really, really fine grained level. That to me was always a really special trait. And it not only made me respect them deeply, but it also made me trust them. I knew I had somebody that I could, collaborate with.
Okay, someone who just sort of knows their way around the job and can relate to the employee. What's the best way to start the day in your opinion?
Cup of coffee, right here.
That's black or with milk or
just a tiny bit of cream.
Okay, all right, a little bit of sugar, a little bit of sweetener.
Exactly.
Nice. And finally, what did you want to be growing up?
I seriously wanted to be an astronaut. And I think I would have gone down that path, but back in that time, you had to have perfect eyesight, and I wore glasses, and so that kind of put an end to that dream. But I'm really happy that I ended up in artificial intelligence instead. And I think I'm frankly happier than I would have been as an astronaut.
Is it space station close to where you are? Or I can't remember where it is now. Is it like Orlando? No.
Well, yeah, Houston. We're Kung Fu AI and mbue. We're based here in Austin, Texas, and so Houston is one of the main centers for American spaceflight. So it's just not too far away at all.
Okay, so there was something in the water that was kind of maybe luring you to be an astronaut, but anyway, in another life. Interestingly, perfectly, that leads me on to Austin, Texas. Now, I think there's a big, especially in the tech world, there's a lot of chat about Austin, and I want you to sort of, give me your opinion on it. How have you seen the city change over the years, especially in terms of business?
Oh, it has changed tremendously. I've been in Austin now over 25 years, and Austin has gone from being sort of a small academic town that really prided itself on live music and kind of there's an old Boston saying, "Keep Boston weird." Just sort of almost a hippie legacy coming back from the 1960s. And over the last 25 years, it's really become a significant tech hub. The number of tech jobs and tech companies here in Austin is just staggering, and that growth has also coincided with kind of a shift in focus. For a long time, Austin was really, to the extent that it had tech, it was mostly focused on B2B tech, business to business tech. And it's really broadened out. There's much, much more diversity and consumer oriented companies that are Austin based now. So it's really dramatically different in many ways. And not to mention that it's just grown like crazy. I mean, there are so many more people here. And it's such a more vibrant, active city than it used to be, years ago.
Is that something that you found really beneficial then, or is it more like, okay, competition? That's we need to strive for a bit more than we were before.
No, it's a great question. It's been wonderful because it means that as the world has become more global and you're competing on a more of a global basis, access to talent is critical. Now, with the move to remote based work, you have more flexibility now, you have more reach, but it's still really, really important to have local talent that is world-class to be competitive globally.
Yeah, it's something really strange because I've worked with some tech companies here in Spain, and it's something they can't seem to get over. There's a lack of talent, as you said, like there's not enough engineers here, and it's like they can't really progress in that, in tech here in this country because they don't have the talent. I don't know why.
Yeah, it can be a real limiting factor. It's really critical because, it's not an exaggeration. I'm sure we'll talk about this in a minute, but, it's Kung Fu AI, which is a services company. we're nothing but the sum of the quality of our people. So it really just boils down to having great talent.
And well, talking about, I suppose being global and that kind of thing, I want to just start off with your studies, because you studied abroad for a little bit. So I just wondered, how did that come about, and did you gain any benefits from that you use today?
I think I did. Yeah. So I did my master's in artificial intelligence at the University of Sussex in England. And that was really a special time because at that point in the sort of the arc of artificial intelligence, it was at a real low point because the hype of sort of the late 80s had not panned out. And so this is kind of in the late 90s. And it's called the second artificial intelligence winter. And so there were really very few places around the world that were offering master's programs where you could combine things like evolutionary theory, dynamical systems, and artificial intelligence. And Sussex was one of them. They were actually, my year was the inaugural year of that program.
Oh,
so I was really lucky to get that sort of cross-discipline education. And then, of course, living abroad is just fantastic. One of the beautiful things about England, as you know well, is you can hop on a plane and be in almost any European country in a couple hours. And so when we were there in grad school, my wife and I used to travel all the time. And that's just, you're making memories for life.
Not good for the masters though, but yeah, good for the memories. All right, brilliant. Sounds great. I wanted to just jump on that a little bit more in terms of, because AI, now you're obviously fully immersed in it. It's only something that for the average person like me has become, clear and obvious recently. But how did you know about it before? Did you have a vision then, like what you wanted to do?
Oh, that's a great question. So I did a computer science degree at the University of Texas here in Austin. And honestly, by the time I was graduating, I was completely burned out. I mean, I was just fried. And I remember going into my last semester thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do professionally, but I know it's not going to be involving software, because I was just really went out. And then my last semester, I had an elective and I took a course on artificial intelligence. And within, a couple of weeks, I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And from that point on, I started studying really hard with the expectation that I would go to grad school, that I would, get a master's in AI and go into industry and practice it. What I didn't count on was, the sort of the AI winter occurring and the dot-com bubble happening. So, when I was in my, 20s, all the oxygen was sucked out of the field of AI. There was nobody doing, by the year 2000, everything was in internet technology. There was no investment in AI. And it really took some changes in the late 2000s to resuscitate the field. And that's really why we're seeing the explosion now. And what's interesting about that is most of the things that we're doing now are really grounded firmly in things that came before this period of prosperity within AI. So, the vast majority of foundational techniques have existed for a while.
Yeah, I'm still getting used to it myself. I'm trying to use it as best I can. I used it a little bit today, which I'm going to come on to later, but I still think I'm using it like a search engine. But anyway, little by little. Right. Just want to go, your first experiences of work. You were working as a chief technology officer for a while, and then product development, and then you founded your first business. So sort of, how could you sort of walk me through your experience and how it led to that first business, and how did it go?
I did a startup immediately after, immediately before grad school. I was actually at a biotech startup in Toronto, Canada, and we were building high-speed DNA sequencing hardware and software. This is, again, about 25 years ago. And instantly I fell in love with the idea of a startup. It just kind of blew my mind that you could have an idea and go build something. It's a bit naive now, but at that point in my career, I kind of could hardly imagine that it was possible to just want to build a product. And so you did that. especially something as complex as like DNA sequencing technology. But the team at this company, Visible Genetics in Toronto, was spectacular. And I really came out of that experience knowing I wanted to do startups the rest of my life. And I also got lucky there. We ended up going public and having a lot of success and got acquired. And so from that point on, I really knew that building things from scratch was in my DNA, what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
And it just, I think it's interesting. So I wanted to ask you about that a little bit, because you have two companies right now. So if they, well, feel free not to answer if you don't want to, but if they grow to a certain point, do you feel like you want to jump ship and start again? Do you like that process of doing startups, or you think now you want to sort of see it till the end?
That's a good question. I would imagine, humbly, I'm pretty confident both these companies are going to be successful. The teams on both of these companies are just phenomenally talented. My main goal anytime I start a company is to focus on building something of value, building something sustainable. And if there's an acquisition or something like that down the line, that's great. But I really don't believe that should ever be your goal, because if you're trying to build a company just to get acquired, you're not going to be making decisions that are in the best interest necessarily of your end users, of your customers. So my philosophy has always been build things that I'm passionate about, and try to build sustainable businesses where you are delighting your customers. And if something happens down the line and there's some type of liquidity event, that's great. But that's sort of an afterthought. And then as far as like starting companies, one of the reasons I love, I've said this before, one of the reasons I love the early stages of companies is I actually get to be hands on keyboard. I actually get to help build the products in the beginning. Once you're a year or two in, you're typically a little too big for me to do that anymore. But that early stage where you just have like sort of a blank whiteboard and you're trying to figure things out is one of my favorite parts of the experience.
Yeah, I've never started my own company per se, but I've worked in smaller companies, and I also imagine that, when it's your baby, it's hard to, it sounds exciting in that, those beginning stages, anything could happen, you're involved in everything. And I couldn't give it up. I don't think I wouldn't be able to, but cross that bridge when it comes, I suppose.
You're balancing between, continue to grow and nurture this thing you've created, and starting something new and creating something new. So regardless, you still do have that pride and that close connection.
Well, jumping onto one of them you're involved in now, Kung Fu AI. So seeing as this is a company that is using AI, I decided to go to AI to help me do my job. And I asked it, I put in the data and I said, okay, what should I ask Ron? And then this is the question they came up with. So, don't blame me if it's rubbish. How does Kung Fu AI differentiate itself from other AI consulting firms? What unique methodologies or approaches do you employ to deliver value to your clients?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So Kung Fu AI is we call ourselves a management consultancy engineering firm. So we do strategy and custom AI development for our clients. We're about 6 years old, and we pride ourselves on a few things. One is we are very production oriented, meaning we are really not the people you want to work with if you're just kind of building back-end systems, like business analytic dashboards and things like that. We're really focused on building public-facing, production-grade systems, and that's really hard with artificial intelligence because it's quite a bit different than traditional software in a lot of ways. It's more experimental. It's more probabilistic. It really takes sort of a different approach, a different methodology, and so we've broken things down over these last 6 years into a methodology where we can go into an environment and build systems, even if they're at the bleeding edge, and even if we're using data that we've never seen before, and reliably de-risk that and deliver, as I said, production grade systems, on time and on budget. And that's a really, really challenging thing to do, because most artificial intelligence based systems today are supervised learning based, which means they learn from data and they learn to generalize from that data. So you train them on typically a bunch of data where you have the inputs and the correct output. Like you have an input and you want this correct prediction. And your hope is that if you design the model well, if you guard against overfitting and underfitting and all these other concerns, that you'll build something that generalizes to unseen data that was never trained on, and you can put it in production and use it for new use cases. And so over the last 6 years, we've done a ton of work in computer vision, natural language processing, predictive analytics, all that type of work across many fields. And I think we are at this point really, really well positioned to tackle almost any problem with the production focus.
You say like any problem, for example. What kind of companies do you normally work with? Is there sort of a trend of, I don't know, fashion company or I don't know, whatever it could be? Is there a certain type of company, or are you working with everybody?
It's a great question. We really early on were asking ourselves if we needed to specialize. Like, do we need to specialize in, let's say, healthcare or financial services? And we decided that we would let the market tell us. So we were open-minded, and we worked across a ton of domains. And what we found is just simply because kind of two things. One is there's a convergence of techniques, meaning you go back 10 years ago, if you were working in computer vision, you could barely have a conversation with somebody who was working in natural language processing. The techniques, the terminology, the approaches were just radically different. And now they've converged in a really amazing way, so that whether you're doing NLP or computer vision project, you're probably using the same architecture. You're probably using many of the exact same training techniques and loss functions and metrics and things like that. So that means it allowed us to keep a really open aperture and work with all kinds of different clients. And that, coupled with the fact that most companies have little to no experience, building, training, deploying artificial intelligence systems yet. So there is just a huge opportunity out there for companies to take advantage of, low-hanging fruit opportunities. And that, coupled with the convergence I mentioned, means we are working with financial services companies, healthcare, space industry, automotive, insurance, on and on and on. I think we've worked across over 24 verticals to date and growing.
From my experience working mostly in companies around education, normally the budgets or the people in control of the budgets are quite traditional, quite stingy in that sense. They don't, or something new, they don't understand it, so they don't want to invest. So I'm just worrying, I want to know from your perspective, how does your company foster that trust among clients when it's something so, what you're working in is so groundbreaking?
Yeah.
People just don't know what it is. How do you get them on board?
That is a great question. It's a few things. Transparency is one of the most important things, because as I've said a few times, AI, machine learning is more experimental, more probabilistic. So being transparent with your clients about the limitations of the system you're building, the limitations of the models, or the risks associated with it, or potential biases, is really, really critical. And so we will typically, we can talk about the methodology maybe in a minute, but we break down our engagements into a phased approach, so that each phase we're reducing risk. And by the time we get to the end, we've got a production grade system that has taken in all the considerations that are critical for the clients. So for example, if you're talking about healthcare, explainability could be really important. Deep learning systems within artificial intelligence can be black boxes, which means they can be very accurate, but they can also be sort of inscrutable, right? They may make a prediction, but you can't really introspect why it made that prediction. So you may have to change the type of modeling techniques you're using when, as an example, explainability is a critical component. And then the other component is ethical considerations. I think a lot of people still underestimate how easy it is for bias to creep in to these models. So, for example, if you're building a loan prediction system, it's going to take in information about somebody and maybe qualify them for a loan. If you go and train that system on historical data, but that data is capturing decades of entrenched racism or discrimination, that model will reflect it. That model will learn those biases. And then if you make the mistake of saying, oh, well, the model made the prediction and it's unbiased, so, everything's fine. Well, that's actually not true at all. It's just perpetuating those biases, in the modern day. So you'd have to be really careful about it.
It's interesting. It kind of leads on to my next question, which was a very typical one, for any business owner. What setbacks have you had, and how did you overcome them? So did this actually, play out at one point, or was there something else that you had to overcome?
It's a great question as well. It's so experimental what we're doing right now, and most of the types of systems we're working with at Kung Fu AI are using pretty advanced techniques. It's pretty easy to get stuck. And in fact, we work with a lot of clients who say, hey, we tried to do this, we got halfway there, we got stuck. And one project that comes to mind, we were building this very ambitious computer vision system within the healthcare space. We're operating on literally terabytes of data. We're using federated learning, which means the data is distributed across different cloud centers in North and South America. But for privacy reasons, the data can't leave its location. So we literally had to do federated learning where we're pushing out models to the edge, et cetera, just very, very complicated. And we weren't seeing results. We were just kind of stuck. We were plateaued from a model performance metric. That's when, as a team, you really have to lean on each other. And one of the things that we preach quite a bit here at Kung Fu AI is vulnerability, meaning the idea that we have many, many people here with advanced, PhDs and postdocs and just decades of experience, but none of us know everything. And so in that instance, we really had to lean on each other. There's just too much to know to be an expert in every possible field. And we started doubling down on our sort of pair programming and our refinement of the experimentation approach. And we're able to break through and achieve, just really groundbreaking results. And for me, the key thing there is just to understand that you can't do anything at a world-class level in this particular field if you're not willing to trust your team and lean on each other. And that, to me, is the biggest difference in the culture and the approach that we take at Kung Fu AI.
Yeah, something I think I've heard before from Gary Vee, very quite a very famous entrepreneur. In terms of accountability is what actually helps you grow. So when you can say okay, I don't know what to do, lead me, and then I know this bit, so let's work together, rather than showing that vulnerability or hiding it, and then you don't go anywhere, right? So it's really interesting. But talking about people, for example, I saw that in this company there are 4 founders, if I'm not mistaken. So I was just wondering, what did you look for in a person to team up with, in business? What do you do?
So I've founded or co-founded 5 different companies over the years. And, I've gone back and forth between saying, oh, I need a team. And then you do a team and you'll sometimes think to yourself, oh, if I didn't have this team, I could just make any decision I wanted. And then I've done solo companies, and they're like, gee, I wish I had a team to bounce stuff off of. And so I ultimately think having a close-knit set of co-founders that have skills that are sort of orthogonal to each other is the best thing you can do. So at Kung Fu AI, there are 4 co-founders. 2 of us are technical and 2 of us are not technical. But on the non-technical side, they're coming to the table with a deep background in startups, business development. One of my co-founders is a former venture capitalist, so coming to the table with a really strong understanding of that space. And it's really amazing. Like we clicked immediately, but it was truly years into the venture before we could look back and appreciate just how lucky we were to find each other, and just how much we complemented each other in an amazing way. So I'm a big fan of finding co-founders that have strengths where you have weaknesses, and that where you get along. I would put it like this: never found a company with people you wouldn't want to go get a beer with.
Well, we're just running a little out of time, so I want to just jump onto your latest business. Could you tell me a little bit about what you do in that one and how the idea came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other company I'm involved in right now is called mbue. We started mbue almost a year ago to focus on bringing artificial intelligence to the architecture space, the architecture, engineering, and construction space. I'm not an architect, but very briefly, you would be dumbfounded by the amount of sort of manual labor that is still involved in some of the tasks. So, for example, change management within architecture, when diagrams are changed, architects literally have to print out both versions and flip between the pages and look for mistakes, errors, omissions. I mean, it blew my mind when I saw this. Well, the reason it's that way is that computer vision techniques until very recently really couldn't offer anything, because it's a perceptual task, meaning you're literally using your eyes to see and understand visual information semantically. And now that we have AI that can do that, our goal at mbue is to essentially take all that manual labor off the plate of these architects and automate change control, cross coordination, and even things like following governance and policies around construction regulations and things like that. You might imagine there is a maximum distance between a fire exit and maybe a door, and just automating the review process as much as possible. That's our mandate.
What do you think that? Because it's fascinating what that could lead to. If things were able to be to be more convenient, what could that lead to in the bigger picture, do you think?
Within AI, it's going to be very disruptive. I mean, I think everybody realizes this now. Some ways it's going to be augmentative, meaning in some ways it's going to help people do their jobs either faster or cheaper or easier or whatever it may be. And mbue is definitely focused on that as well as that. But we're also focused on sort of opening new doors, meaning there are going to be things that we will be able to do in the future because of AI that go way beyond just automating existing tasks. And so you might imagine, with the example I'm giving you, okay, so if you identify some type of regulation violation, don't just tell me about it, fix it, right? Update the plan. And there are generative AI capabilities that we can lean on to make that possible. So you get all of this, time back from what is essentially manual labor. And we as humans would be able to turn that and focus it on more creative, impactful uses of our time.
Yeah, definitely. I think could really help, the housing situation in many countries, right? It sounds fascinating.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you very much. And we wish you all the best with mbue and Kung Fu AI. Thanks a lot, Ron.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.